Before we get started, I've got some exciting news. HelloFresh is now a proud sponsor of Divorce and Beyond. If you've been thinking about cutting back on grocery bills, avoiding food waste, or just getting dinner on the table without stress, this is your moment because right now, HelloFresh is offering one free item in every box for life. That's right, every single box you order includes a free item forever. And just to give you a taste of what that looks like, get it, taste, I got pineapple upside down cakes in my first order. I originally discovered HelloFresh during the pandemic, and I fell in love with learning new recipes and expanding our dinner routine. I let it go for a while because, hey, I live in Chicago with world-class restaurants on every corner, but with today's rising costs, HelloFresh is back on my table, and I'm so glad it is. So if you're ready to save time, money, and dinner, go to divorceandbeyond.com/HelloFresh and sign up today to grab that free item for life. You can also find a link in the show notes or divorceandbeyond.com/HelloFresh. And now let's get into today's episode.
Coming up on today's episode of the Divorce and Beyond podcast.
Having, one eye on the ball for what you're currently dealing with in the divorce, but also starting to peek ahead and start to think about what things are going to look like down the road. It's super helpful. And Susan, I would argue it's an essential perspective that you need when you're settling your case.
Hello, and welcome to the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host. As a top divorce attorney and family law mediator for 30 years, I know what you need to know to get through your divorce, and most importantly, how to move beyond it to thrive and transition to your new future. My experts and I are here to give you the insider view into the process, so listen in for the wisdom and expert information you need on your journey through divorce and beyond. Welcome back to another episode of Divorce and Beyond. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and today we are going to dive into one of the most critical but often overlooked parts of the divorce journey. That's what happens after the papers are signed. So many people spend all of their time and energy focused on just getting through the divorce itself. But the truth is, your future depends on what you do in the months and years that follow. That's why today's episode is all about building your post-divorce financial roadmap. Those are the practical strategies, mindset shifts, and confidence-building steps that will help you move forward with clarity and strength. And I could not ask for a better guide than my guest today, Patrick Kilbane. Pat is a partner at Ullman Wealth Partners, where he serves as director of the Divorce Advisory Group, general counsel, and wealth advisor. He brings a unique perspective as both a seasoned family law attorney and a certified divorce financial analyst. Pat has spent more than 2 decades helping clients, especially high net worth individuals, navigate the financial complexities of divorce and beyond. He's also the co-author of the powerful book, Move Forward Confidently, A Woman's Guide to Navigating the High Net Worth Divorce, which has been helping women across the country take back control of their financial lives. In our conversation today, Pat and I will explore what it takes to transition from fear and overwhelm during divorce into empowerment and strategy afterward. From cash flow clarity to retirement resets, rebuilding credit to redefining your goals, Pat will share his expert insights, and I promise you'll walk away with actionable golden nuggets you can start applying right away. So let's dive in and learn how you can move forward confidently into your financial beyond. Patrick, I am so glad that you are joining me here today. I am really looking forward about diving into this topic that so many people forget to think about when they're in the throes of the divorce, but it can really be one of the most important factors. So thank you so much for coming and joining me.
Susan, it's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the invitation.
So, you and I were just talking, and I really want to point out to my listeners because they've been with me for a long time. They know that I've had some wonderful financial professionals on the show. In fact, we just did a special double episode that included a financial professional. But when I go back and look at the hundreds of episodes that are in the archive of Divorce and Beyond, for all of them, we have focused on the financial aspects of divorce in the process. And certainly that is an area of your expertise, right? You help people in that area, but you help people also as they transition and go into their life in their beyond, right? And that is an area that gets just glossed over or left for later. And I think it's really important to start thinking about it at some point in the divorce. So let's start there. Why do you think it's important to be thinking about that during the divorce?
You make such an important distinction, and it does. And I think our clients that are in the very beginning or even in the throes of the divorce process, they're just thinking about getting out. They want to get out of this terrible process. They want to get the biggest slice of the pie that they absolutely can. But at some point, our clients start to sort of emerge from that space that they're in and they start thinking about down the road. So what I talk to the people that I'm working with is say, okay, we're starting to, the outcome is starting to crystallize. And now we need to start thinking about building that financial infrastructure for when you're done and you're on your own and you're going to be solely in charge of managing your assets. So, yeah. And at the very beginning of the process, most people going through it can't see that far down the road. But you're right. At some point, we have to transition from what I call Susan 1.0 to Susan 2.0.
I love that, right? Because that's something I say to clients, and I've said it for years, is when you're in the overwhelm of divorce, it can be very hard to imagine that anything other than divorce is your life, right? That anything other than this current moment is your life. But we know, having helped so many people through the process, that thankfully, divorce is a very finite period of time in your life for most people. And it's the 2.0 where your beyond really begins. And I like that idea that you have that, it's not something to push yourself on to get to that planning, but everyone does really start to reach that point. I think you said it's when the after starts to gel, when you start to see what this is going to look like, that they're able to make that switch. So when you're talking with clients, say you were talking to one of your divorce clients, someone you're supporting through divorce, how do you know they're ready in that moment to start looking to the beyond?
Fortunately or unfortunately, now I have 2 decades plus of helping clients through the divorce process, whether I was representing them in the divorce or whether I'm helping them with their finances. And what I've learned from my experience is when somebody is going through a divorce, they still identify in a lot of aspects as a couple. And as the process is unfolding, they're starting to get their voice. They're starting to say, hey, now I really need to reimagine what my life is going to look like. Hence what I call the Susan 2.0. So before we build that infrastructure, I need to spend time with them, helping them rediscover who they are and what the next phase of their life is going to look like. So as a married couple, they had goals, whether they're financial or non-financial, and they had an idea of what they're interested in, what they like to do. Now it's time to have that discussion with an individual and help them flesh that out. And once we sort of have an idea, and by the way, a lot of times this is an evolving process. Year one post-divorce may look radically different than what year three looks like post-divorce. So if we have to replan or sort of build the airplane as we're flying it, that's quite okay. And that's why it's great to know somebody while they're getting divorced, while they're emerging through the divorce, while they're fresh post-divorce, and then when they're sort of well beyond the divorce, because that person is a vastly different person in all of those different stages.
You're so spot on with that. I think, I want to make sure my listeners are catching that, because it's hard to understand in the moment of the divorce that you, the person going through this, are going to evolve. Like, you are going to change from who you are in this moment, which is probably a person who's dealing with fear, right? You and I both know, as people go through the divorce process, they feel a lot of fear, especially around finances. We just, know that's when there's unknown around that. And one of the things I know you talked about in your book was that shift from fear to the empowerment phase. And that's part of that growth process. And, there's so much about empowerment that comes from getting on top of the finances, I think. What do you think?
100%. And, I recognize that a lot of times the clients that I work with, they have duties. And a lot of times those duties were not the financial decisions. And that was the other party's responsibility. It's not that they're not smart or they're not educated and they don't have the tools to do it. Now it's their responsibility. So sort of helping them understand the parameters, what we're trying to do, empower them, educate them, make them feel confident that, hey, here's the range of how much you can spend on a monthly basis, what your budget is to spend on a trip, and so on and so forth. And as long as you make decisions within those navigational buoys, you're bulletproof. You're going to be okay. So that's what I like to do. I don't want to, be the domineering person that's going to take the wheel from them and make all the decisions. They need to develop the confidence to make the decisions. And I'm happy to be those training wheels, so to speak, for as long as they need them.
Yeah, I love the training wheels analogy, right? The financial training wheels. And you said the word strategy earlier. And, that's what I'm hearing you saying here, is that one of the things that you help your clients do and that evolves through this process and into their beyond is an evolving financial strategy. And that's really what I see you helping them do. I love your analogy of, here are sort of some boundaries or parameters, but there's also, think of the freedom and opportunity you have within those boundaries and parameters to make decisions about what suits you best. And for some of these people, this might be, as you pointed out, they may not have been the one making financial decisions in the relationship. So there's a lot of freedom suddenly in being able to do that. But it starts with the strategy, I think.
Absolutely. And so to play on analogies again, let's say that you're a distance runner, you're a marathon runner, and you run your marathon at, let's say, an 8-minute pace, and your goal is to, improve your time and run at a 7-minute and 50-second pace. So if that's the goal, we're going to build that infrastructure around that goal. And, if you see a woman you're competing against who is running their marathons at a 7:20 pace, you told me your goal is to run at a 7:50 pace. Let's not compare what Susan is trying to do with what Jane is trying to do. Our plan is for Susan. Forget everybody else. Forget what everybody else is doing. It's great to benchmark, but your plan is uniquely tailored to you. And as long as your goals still remain the same and you're following your plan, let's focus on you and not worry about everybody else.
I love that. Your analogies are great, by the way. I somebody who can explain things. I think it's important for people to understand, because a lot of times I would imagine you're talking with people, as you've said, women who have not sometimes had the ability to manage the finances for the family. There's a bifurcation of duties and goals and roles within the relationship. And so somebody who has that facility of explaining what can be hard to grasp concepts in a way that makes them easily understandable, as you are doing, is really, that's a gift and a talent. So I appreciate that. Let's sort of hone in here, because since I have you here and since you are the expert and you work with people in the space, I'd love to dive into some, actual, as I call them on the podcast, golden nuggets for my listeners. If we could turn our focus maybe to the first 6 months or so post-divorce, what do you like to have ready to go as they're coming to the end of the divorce process? What strategies, what do you like to have in place that they can, be thinking of to get through the new normal of those first 6 months? Maybe things like cash flow or budget, things like that.
Sure. So what I like to do, again, keep it really simple and try to hone in on, let's see, in Susan's new life, how much money does it take for Susan to run her life on a monthly basis? Of course, there are going to be outlier expenses. Since we're in September and I live in Florida, this is when the air conditioners go out, right? So that's not in the monthly cash flow budget, or maybe you need a new set of tires, but month to month, we know how much it takes to run Susan's life. So I like to say, okay, in your checking account, let's make sure you have 1 month's worth of living expenses in your checking account. Okay. Then let's make sure that we build a savings account. Rule of thumb is we want to have 3 to 6 months worth of monthly living expenses in that savings account. Okay. Now, if you're an alimony recipient or you're going to be using your investments to live off on a monthly basis, what I want to make sure is the alimony, if you're getting it, is going right to your checking account to help you pay those reoccurring monthly expenses. And then your brokerage account and your retirement account, if you're at the appropriate age where we need to start withdrawing from that, we want to send you a monthly paycheck. So you don't have to call me up every month and ask for money and so on and so forth. But we pick the date, and maybe you're receiving Social Security, or we're working and now you're retired. And we want to send the amount of money that you need on a monthly basis to live in accordance with that pay schedule. So if you got paid biweekly, let's send part of it in accordance with that pay schedule. So you still have that same familiarity with the cash flow, with getting your paycheck, or when your spouse got paid and that's when you saw the paycheck hit that account. So we want to make it as normal as possible. And we want to give you the confidence that every single month, those cash flow needs are being met, and we have a plan for that. And what I also like to do is consolidate. A lot of people come with accounts spread all over the place. And instead of getting, triplicate statements from Schwab and Morgan Stanley and TD Ameritrade, so on and so forth, let's declutter everything and let's simplify it. And let's get it to the point where it's easy for your advisor to manage and it's easy to implement your plan. I don't like to call it simple. I like to call it elegant.
Elegant is a great term for it. And what I'm hearing for those 6 months, which just, I would imagine this will sound so appealing to anyone out there listening who's in the chaos of the divorce process, is there's a plan and a strategy for that first period after the divorce is finalized that allows you to take a little bit of a breather, right? A little bit of a settle into this new normal, as I said.
Right. Depending on how the negotiations are going, if the divorce case settled when, market conditions aren't optimal, sometimes I like to ask for additional cash to help build up. I mean, we don't have to tell them what it's for, but I like to ask the attorneys if they can bake that in, so to speak. So again, my client doesn't have that initial worry, like, okay, I know I may have to buy new furniture. I may have to replace an automobile. I may have to save for a down payment for wherever I'm going to eventually live, if that's on the cards, if I'm not keeping my house. So if we can bake that in, or we know that part of the settlement is already there, that's what I talked about, building that infrastructure before the case is even settled. So as soon as it's settled, there's not that moment of, oh my gosh, now what? So if we have sort of an idea, again, I'm going to use an analogy. Let's say you have a you have a puzzle and it's got 1,000 pieces. If you have 800 of the pieces, you know that that's a cactus, and you can start. You have an idea of what the picture is going to be. But if you only have 200 pieces, you don't know if it's an elephant or a cactus, right? So once we're starting to get close, then we start to build that plan. So the moment that everything is signed, sealed, and delivered, and then the judge signs off on the agreement, my client has the confidence to say, okay, boom, the infrastructure is built. I know exactly how much I can spend on a monthly basis. We've already done the hard work, the administrative work of opening accounts and consolidating accounts. So as soon as it's done, and I have the official documents to roll over retirement accounts and do all those things, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go. And that's, you're bringing up something that I have seen be such a problem for people that really hones in on that value of having a financial advisor both during the divorce as well as one who can then help carry you into the beyond. And that's what I've seen sort of as a pain point for so many clients who wait to get a financial advisor until after the divorce. It's certainly, if you didn't get one during the divorce, do get one post-divorce for a lot of good reasons. But I think one of the things you're really pointing out here is how you can really maximize the effect for yourself by having someone help you build the strategy, do the negotiations, and then negotiate toward that future so that when you get there, you're not starting from scratch or feeling chaotic.
That's exactly right. People conflate financial advisor and investments only. They're not thinking about all of the other things that factor into your financial plan. How do we reduce expenses? How do we reduce taxes? How do we reduce debt if debt is a part of the equation? What's the appropriate insurance? What type of health insurance plan should I have? When do I sign up for Medicare? What about wills and trusts? What if I'm very philanthropically inclined? What's the best way that I can maximize my charitable impact while also reducing taxes? So I get it. People don't like to pay professional fees, but I really think that especially the services that we provide, there's so much more to it. And I want to be I want to provide that concierge service to my clients where if they want to call up and say, hey, I need a credit card, for example. I've never done this before. I've just had the same old credit card. Which one should I get and why? Another thing that I do from time to time is I masquerade as sort of like a nephew for some of my clients who've never purchased a car or leased a car. And I go with them, and through my contacts in the auto industry, we try to have an idea of how much room to negotiate is there really with this particular car? And then if we even back it up, is that the right car? And depending on their age and how much they drive, maybe a lease is a little bit more expensive, but maybe that's the better solution for them. So all of these things go into it. I just like to help take that off somebody's plate and give them the confidence to live their life and say, okay, Pat and his team have it handled.
We'll be right back with more insights from Patrick Kilbane on building your post-divorce financial roadmap. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Let's take a little minute to talk about something special. If you follow me on Instagram, you all know how much I love my Evil Eye pendant. I love I have my bracelet. I have the pendant that goes around my neck. I wear Evil Eyes all the time. And so many of you have reached out asking where I got them. I'm thrilled to share with you all, drum roll please, that my favorite jewelry source, Yumi U Jewelry, is now a sponsor of Divorce and Beyond. For me, Yumi U Jewelry is more than just jewelry. The symbols are symbols of strength, individuality, and empowerment. And they handcraft each piece with love and care. And so they are designed to help women stand out and embrace our unique personalities. So whether it's an evil eye like I have chosen for protection, a hamsa for faith, or any other meaningful symbol, their pieces offer beauty and inspiration even during these tough times like divorce. So here's the best part. Yumi U is giving my listeners an exclusive discount if you use the code BEYOND, that's BEYOND, all caps, at checkout, you'll get 20% off your order. 20%. So if you're looking for a meaningful piece to keep you inspired or to protect you during this difficult time, visit divorcebeyond.com/YumiU. That's YUMIYU. There will be a link in the show notes. And treat yourself or treat someone you love to something special. You deserve it. And now let's get back to Pat and learn how you can move forward confidently into your financial future. We know that so many people who are going through divorce these days, in fact, I think the largest group going through divorce are people who are 50 and over, what is called gray divorce. And there's a lot that really falls to this population that adds some additional complication. And that's both during the divorce, but certainly after. And the first one that pops out to me is in that retirement and investment planning, because most of the time these people have retirement accounts, they have investment accounts, but they have a lot less time to rebuild those before retirement, or as you pointed out earlier, they might already be in retirement. So what, sort of strategies post-divorce for that group do you look to?
Let's just think of a couple different buckets. So there's somebody with a brokerage account, with a retirement account, with a 401k, with an annuity. Is that annuity qualified or non-qualified? Do we have a Roth IRA also? So there's all these different buckets. Well, when it's time for me to retire, if I'm still working, do I continue to contribute to my 401k? And once I stop, where do I take the money from first and why? What's my distribution strategy? So all of these things we're going to map out, and we're going to help them understand. First of all, this is why you own the investments that you own. So many people, you look at their portfolio and I ask them, "Why do you even know why you own what you own?" And they look at me like, "No, I have no idea." Okay. So I want to help them understand why they own what they own. Then we have our different buckets. They all do different things. They're all different tools in the toolbox. Where are we going to take from first? And then when that bucket is empty, what's the next bucket? And then what's the next bucket and why? When somebody's done working, but they haven't started taking Social Security and they're not taking income from their portfolio, there's opportunities to do Roth IRA conversions, to take some capital gains taxes and pay a much lower rate or no rate at all. Very, very unique options depending on what your circumstances are. So that's why it's important to start this planning and have a game plan for each one of those different phases.
Yeah. I think that answer actually will show anyone if you are confused at all by what Pat was just talking about, that's a very good reason why a good financial advisor in your post-divorce space is going to be so important, because it's not simple. I think people go through the divorce and think that it is a simple splitting of accounts, just divide them up, and then that's what you take into your beyond. That's what you take into your future. And as you were just pointing out, there's a great deal of strategy based upon where you are in your life about those accounts, but also those may not be the accounts that you want. I mean, you have some opportunity to change things around a bit post-divorce as well, don't you?
Absolutely. And depending on whether you work and whether you don't, dividing up the assets, you may be able to, if you don't have retirement assets or you don't have any Roth IRA assets, you may want to ask for more of those and make sure that they're tax affected when you're dividing the assets. So it really depends, but having one eye on the ball for what you're currently dealing with in the divorce, but also starting to peek ahead and start to think about what things are going to look like down the road. It's super helpful. And Susan, I would argue it's an essential perspective that you need when you're settling your case.
I could not agree more strenuously. And I want the listeners to hear this, that, Now I'm going to use an analogy because I just spent the weekend watching college football, and you're talking about, right? Like the quarterback has to be focused on the receivers that he's going to pass the ball to, but he also has to be focused on the end zone and what receiver is going to be able to get to that end zone. And he's also sort of focused on the end result of the game and the strategy of the overall, offense. So those are all the things your financial advisor is. And I think this is an important point for people. The financial advisor is like the coach on the sidelines, giving the direction and the help. And you, the client, are the quarterback tossing the balls around to a certain degree. And if you don't have good coaching, then the quarterback is really hindered.
And since you opened the door with the college football analogy, if for the sports fans listening, you often hear the commentators say, well, gosh, they really set that play up. They ran, to the left 3 times and then did a play action. And that play call wasn't expected because of how they set things up. And I think that's what I absolutely love to do. I know that's why I was put on this earth professionally, to help people in this circumstance think about down the road. What are we going to do in the first quarter that's going to set us up for success in the third and the fourth quarter?
It's divorce as football. That's our new theme here. I'm going to have to come up with a graphic for the episode of you in a coach's uniform. But, I think that's really important for people to understand that, you're there coaching them, supporting them, helping come up with the plays and the strategy and the overall game-winning philosophy so that they can be the winning quarterback of their financial life.
And Susan, unfortunately, for whatever reason, it's intuitive for you and me, but it is so often missed or overlooked during the process. And people just look at the divorce process as, okay, it begins and ends, and then there's this new, after divorce, and then that phase starts. But, if you're not looking to the future, considering what you're going through right now and how you can optimize the future, I will tell you, I'm working on an extremely ultra high net worth divorce case right now where the parties have been married for 3 decades plus. They have an incredibly complicated, irrevocable estate planning, and they're very cooperative, to their credit. The advisors on both sides were working with the estate attorney and the tax attorney, and some of the things that we're doing are helping both of them optimize their finances for when they split up, because they're still married and they're cooperating together. So what can we do right now? For example, there's some slats. SLAT is an acronym for Spousal Lifetime Access Trust. They both have the opportunity to to add more to their slats while they're still married. And as long as people are working together, you can do those things. So a lot of people listening just assume, boy, you get into a divorce and it's terribly acrimonious, but there are extreme benefits that are available to high net worth couples that are still willing to work together to maximize the outcome for both of them.
I'm really glad that you made that point. I think that's really important for people to hear, because people do assume that the divorce is, going to be that, more for me, less pie for you, sort of zero-sum negotiation. And they assume that the professionals that are hired to support the individual people in the divorce are also going to carry forward that zero-sum mindset. And
couldn't be further from the truth.
Not for the good ones. They're not for the good ones. But I've seen all, long time practice. I've seen everything, but the best ones are the ones who can come in and sit down, and I call it the problem solving, right? The maximizing mindset of getting a resolution that's best for everyone.
Absolutely. So here's my perspective. So of course, my client, may be less than thrilled with some things that have happened or even being in this situation, but people who are married for a long period of time, there has to be some redeeming qualities for these people to get together. And generally, in every case, both parties share some degree of fault. It may not be 50-50, but it takes 2 to tango. I assume that for the most part, these are both good people who want to move on with their life. Let's get them in, let's get them out as efficiently, as fairly, as equitably, also with a mind on what's coming next and how do we best prepare for that.
That mindset toward what's coming next. When you can work together cooperatively like that, if you can bring yourself to work collaboratively with your spouse during this process and your professionals have that same mindset, you personally will end up in a better position than you would if you went into it adversarially. And so just from self-preservation point of view, I try to get people to understand that.
No question. And so you and I are recording this near the end of the third quarter in 2025. So an issue that we're starting to see now is for cases that are just getting going and they're getting ready to settle, do we reach an agreement now and have the court ratify the agreement after January 1st? Because as long as you're married on December 31st, you have the ability to file married filing jointly. So how much money can you save on taxes in 2025 by just having that agreement signed a couple months later after you reach the agreement?
Yeah, so there's a good golden nugget, everyone, because I cannot count how many divorces, especially those that are settled, say, come to that final agreement in the last quarter of the year where the decision is made to defer entering judgment until January. They always say that January is divorce month. One of the things that makes it divorce month is the first week of January is when more divorces are finalized than any other time of year. But those could be cases that settled months earlier. So that's another area that your financial professionals are well aware of. Hopefully your legal professionals are as well, but something that needs to be discussed and negotiated so that you can move into that beyond in a better way. Well, I could ask you so many questions for people in that post-divorce world, but what's one last, you just had a great golden nugget, but what's one last golden nugget focused on the beyond that you'd like to leave people with?
I was hoping you'd ask. So many people, let's assume they don't have minor children. There's no real good financial reason for them to continue to stay in the marital home. I mean, right now, some people are locked into 30-year fixed mortgage where they have, mortgage interest rates at like 2.75%. We'll likely never see historic low rates like that ever again. But a lot of people, Susan, want to go out and buy a house right away. And what I tell everybody, rent for a month or two. Oh, well, I won't be building equity. Well, maybe not. At least you're going to know for 12 months, 24 months, what your monthly fixed housing cost is going to be. And then who knows, 3 years, 5 years from now, you may be living in a totally different part of town, in a totally different city, but there is absolutely no rush to run out and buy a new house.
That is a wonderful point. And actually, it could be an entire podcast episode of its own. It's so important that people realize that because decisions around real estate tend to be some of the biggest mistakes, at least that I have seen. And people often think it's about keeping the house during the divorce. That is one big mistake that people can make if they can't afford the house. But that's a really good point as well. Going out, rushing out to buy something new. We talked earlier in this episode about the fact that you are going to change and evolve. And it's much easier for your evolution to take place when the divorce is final because you're able to start growing and really moving into your new life. And what seems to suit you month one after the divorce may very well not suit you 2 years down the road after the divorce.
I can't tell you how many people I've worked with over the years that they've told me, gosh, that was the best piece of advice that you gave me from a financial perspective. Pump the brakes. Don't rush out. Certainly, if your goal, and nobody wants to live in a rental or a high density living forever, but just catch your breath. Continue that self discovery process on what Susan 2.0 is really going to look like, and then decide from a position of strength.
From a position of strength. And that's what you have. I mean, that's the financial empowerment that we've been talking about throughout this episode from a position of strength. So, Pat, this has been such a helpful episode for people. I am very grateful for your wisdom and insights for my listeners, because we've really gone into something that they are not likely to hear from anyone unless they get someone of your caliber involved in their case. So I very much appreciate it. Let's tell people the best ways to get in touch with you. And, I know you work with people, you're in Florida, but you work with people, I believe, all over the country.
I do. Our website, ullmanwealthpartners.com. Ullman has 2 L's and 2 N's. You can contact us on the website. As you and I discussed, I do work with people all over the country, and I'm working on a case in the United Kingdom right now as we speak. So happy to help you and your team. A lot of the state dissolution of marriage laws, there's a couple wrinkles, but for the most part, it's about 90% the same. But I think helping people really pull back the curtain and understand the whole process, help them develop a plan for their divorce, and then as the case is wrapping up and when they're ready, let's build that infrastructure for what the next phase is going to look like.
You're beyond strategy, everybody. So thank you, Pat. Thank you again so much. This is going to be a great episode for people. I will put all of your contact information, the link to the book, everything in the show notes for my listeners so that they can find it. And, be prepared for some follow-up questions, because I know they're going to be sending them in. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Susan. Let's do it again.
We will. Let's do an Instagram Live with those questions. We'll have some fun with it. All right, listeners, before we wrap up, let's do a quick Golden Nuggets roundup from today's episode with Pat. Number 1, divorce is a reset, not just an ending. Think of it as your opportunity to build a stronger financial foundation for your 2.0 life. Second nugget, cash flow clarity is key. Know exactly what it costs you to run your life from month to month and put systems in place to cover it. Third golden nugget, simplify and streamline. Consolidate accounts, create an elegant structure, and reduce financial clutter so you can focus on your goals. And finally, number 4, think strategy, not just survival. The best financial outcomes come when you look beyond the divorce and plan for the long game. Don't forget, listeners, every step you take to bring clarity and strategy to your finances brings you closer to your new beginning. You do not have to do it all at once, but you do have to start. And I'll see you next time here on Divorce and Beyond, where we help you thrive into your beautiful beyond. Thank you for joining me today on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I hope you found some information and inspiration to help you on this journey. Please join me every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. And if you like the show, please take the time to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You can also find more information on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com, where you'll find links to the YouTube channel, transcripts of the episodes, and other bonus content. So I'll see you next week to help you move through your divorce and beyond.